engagement and outreach at the Community Library of DeWitt in Janesville. And I am very fortunate to be joined by Nan. I don't know if she's to your left on your screen, but I just Nan Brown, who is our teen librarian and a fellow outreach librarian. And so I kind of wanted to start off by just saying really quickly that civic engagement is something that is extremely important to public libraries in particular. Public libraries have kind of long functioned as a public communal space where people can really engage and exchange ideas. And our goal is really to provide public access to educational and informational resources. And so we're very, very grateful and thankful for Pamela Hunter to join us here this evening. So thank you on your busy, busy day to take time out to come chat with us all.
Happy to be here.
Thanks. And so tonight I thought we'll start the evening by asking Pamela a number of questions that relate to kind of the functions of state government, what her role is, and the best ways that you can participate and contact your representatives. I know that a couple of people, I don't know if they're here, but submitted questions earlier when they registered. So we'll make sure we get to them as well toward the end of the evening. And finally, since it's a small group, we can wrap up with some question and answers if anyone has any questions for Pamela that they didn't ask in the registration in advance. And if you have any other questions that you don't feel like talking out loud, feel free to submit them in the chat. Nan will be monitoring the chat kindly, so I can chat. So thank you, Nan. So I thought I would kind of start off by asking Pamela what a typical workday looks like for you. I know the last 6 months have been very trying and very different probably from your normal work schedule, but I think it's important to kind of like illuminate or demystify in a sense what the daily schedule of a politician looks like.
It's definitely pre-COVID and during COVID looks a little bit different. It's always still meeting and having conversations with constituents, drafting legislation, but it just looks different. There is not one day that is similar to the next, not one. During the time that we're in session in Albany from January to June, the thing that remains the same is always being in the Capitol and voting. But the volume of people who come to your office is enormous, and every 30 minutes you're talking about a different subject. So, it's being able, that's that reading that we're talking about, very important, to make sure that you're up on the bills that are in front of you and the advocacy that people are talking about. They want to know that you have read the bills and that you have an opinion about the things that you're voting on. During COVID, it has been just so different. We spent several months working with people trying to get their unemployment money. Mm-hmm. It's astounding the volume of people who went months without pay, and it's their money and they're waiting for it. And it just was heart-wrenching. It was just really bad. And then talking about, how do I get a COVID test? Can my business open? When can it open? What are the protocols? Everything from surgery centers to, the eye doctor, then you're talking about a movie theater, what about the mall, the air filtration, it's just like one to the next. And then you're still having conversations about the state budget and where's the money, and there is no money. And then still working through trying to get the legislation that you passed already signed by the governor. So today, I'll give you an example for today. And then there is always it's going into campaign season. So there is time that you must spend during the day to, work on that as well. So today was probably not a usual day. I spent, a significant amount of time on Zoom today. I went to a press conference today. One of the senators who sponsored one of my bills was in town. So we were able to advocate for that. And so it was busy today, on Zoom. I had a conversation with one of our municipal leaders talking about things in the municipality today. Tomorrow, it'll be 3 different conversations about 3 separate issues with either constituents calling or organizations calling, just trying to get a feel for where is the legislation, do you support it, how can we advance it? lots of phone conversations, lots of Zoom, obviously. My office is open, but it's not really open to the public. I try to be cognizant that the staff that I have working to make sure that they feel safe, in this COVID environment. So I'm probably around more people than they are. But there is not one day that looks the same, except for January to June when we're in Albany, when that was happening. Every day you're going to be in the Capitol voting. You just don't know the volumes of people that are going to come through and the different meetings that you're going to take.
That sounds like a lot. How many staff members do you have here or versus in Albany? And do people travel, or do you kind of have separate offices between them?
So I have an office here, my district office, and in the LOB, the Legislative Office Building in Albany, that is where my legislative director is housed out of, and he works there full time. I have a full-time chief of staff who, is the lifeblood of my office. She manages everything going on in both offices. I have a scheduler, an admin who tries to navigate, the system of my hundreds of emails that I get every day. And I have a constituent liaisons, and they do a lot of community stuff. And also people call the office from jail. They call the office about their taxes. They call the office about anything and everything. And we want to make sure that we have people to answer their emails and phone calls.
Yeah, that sounds like a good team, but it sounds like you might need a few more staff.
It is. We're small but mighty. It's interesting because the assembly budget is exactly the same as the Senate budget, but there are 150 assembly members and only 63 senators. So obviously they get more money, but per person, but their districts are obviously larger. I'm a small but mighty, person. I feel like I don't micromanage, and the people know what they're needing to get done, and they do an outstanding job. And the thing that I always share with every one of my employees is that we work for the people. When our office is open, we're open for our constituents. That's what we're there for, regardless if the person voted for me or not, regardless of if they are a voter or not. 130,000 people I represent. If they need me, we need to make sure that my office is available to them.
That's great. I was wondering if you could maybe break down a bit and talk a bit more about the structure of New York State government, because I think it can be a little confusing for people. Especially too, when people come to you for kind of questions about legislation, and you have to get back to them, or do you sit on different committees that you can refer to, or do you go directly to the governor? I'm just kind of curious about the structure and operations of New York State government. And
I think that civics needs to be in every single classroom every year. It's really interesting because, and this is, I learned, especially when I ran for city council, that it's important to know the job that you are running for and the actual responsibilities and the things that you can and can't do. Because, many times I'm gonna, do something with the school district. And it's like, there's not one thing that you can do for the school district if you're not a school board member. And I think that's probably one of the most important things, is actually to know what the role is of an assembly member. Obviously, there's three branches of government: the executive, the legislature, and the judiciary. But we have the Senate and the Assembly, and they're all Democratic now, and the governor. Any bill that gets introduced in the Assembly has to have a same as bill in the Senate in order for both of them to pass, and then go to the governor to either sign or to veto. I sit on several committees. I chair the subcommittee for women veterans. I'm actually a veteran, and I'm the only female veteran in the whole state legislature. So I'm able to bring a little bit of voice, for that. I sit on the Veterans Committee, Social Services, Transportation, Energy, and Insurance. And, I picked all of those for a reason, because I thought they were all very important for the district. But mostly it's like the military in a way. There's hierarchy, and the hierarchy is there's a committee chair. So if you have a bill and you want it to get passed, or you have questions on how to move it forward, you can go to the committee chair. the Speaker of the Assembly and the Senate Majority Leader are the leaders of each house, and they're the ones who convene us, the meetings. They are the ones to make sure that we know what's going on, and what our schedule is going to be. And there's very limited amount of time one ever speaks to the governor. It's either the majority leader or the Speaker of the Assembly who have those conversations. I think that there had always been that kind of 3 men in a room making decisions, for everyone. And I can tell you that's absolutely not how it works. I think that's an interesting narrative. If you belong to any organization, every single employee does not sit at the table and make a decision. Obviously, you have to, just like if you're in a union, obviously you have the people who are the ones who negotiate on your behalf. And that is the Speaker and the Majority Leader in the Assembly, and the Majority Leader in the Senate and her deputy. And we know what they're negotiating. All 150 of us are not sitting in the room with the governor. And I think that kind of narrative is like a wrong thing, that most people need to actually know the facts. And we do have people to negotiate on our behalf, but there aren't 150 of us in a room, and nor would any organization do that. And that simply is kind of how the hierarchy works. It's really not that complex, but I think, people call my office and say, somebody didn't pick up my trash. And I said, did you call the city? Depending on where they live. I think people think that, it's like you're the go-to for everything, and that's fine. And we'll take care of that. But definitely, I think that, sometimes there's confusion as far as like, what does city government do? What does county government do? And obviously state and federal. And that does seem like a lot of government.
I know. And how would you say like your job differs from the state senators at all? Is it just more so the way it's structured? And
essentially, they're equal branches of government.
Yeah.
So although they have a higher constituency, it's like more geography. Essentially, they have the exact same job, just more people that they represent.
Yeah, and going back to that, I think so often like state government and local government is overshadowed by like federal government in the media, and in terms of also how people know how to participate or how to make their voices heard. But your legislative body just focuses on so many substantive issues that really have kind of a daily impact on our lives. So I was curious kind of how we people, we minions, no, okay, can best, no, I know, I'm just kidding, can best stay informed, especially in light of all of the information that's out there, and the many different platforms and places to find information.
I think unfortunately that we are really overshadowed by a lot of the conversations that come from the federal level, what happens on a daily basis in your life is actually more governed by local municipal laws than is the federal government. But that's not what you hear. It's unfortunate because if you're talking about we need more money for our schools, those conversations come from property taxes where you live. It comes from state money that comes, and then there is obviously federal dollars that comes as well, making sure that people have that census filled out. We need to know how much money, is allocated. And I think that there obviously is, a lot of confusion about that. But I think it's important to be able to know what each one of your levels does so that you know how to reach out to them. And you have to be actively engaged in what's going on. And like I was telling some young people today, and I know it's hard, COVID is hard and school is really hard, and we're all a little depressed and anxious, and a lot of stuff is going on, and information is being thrown at us, and sometimes it's not accurate, information. But we're making decisions about people's livelihoods, and being able to have the information is important. So you're informed voter. So when you call my office and you're saying, I don't like the way you voted on a bill, or can you please support, what's going on. And I think, that more than anything is like really important, is that the information is out there more than just at the fingertips of your cell phone, to be able to actively engage. I simply say to this to young people: do you feel fresh water is important? Do you think that our air needs to be clean? And will they say, well, yeah, of course, that sounds like a stupid question. Why would you ask me something like that? Because we're voting on those things right now. And then they're also, voting on those things at the federal level, taking away the regulations for some of those very things that, we hold that's important. And sometimes you just have to kind of bring it down to that level because it seems overwhelming. But it really is incumbent upon all of us to be a good citizen and be actively engaged and to be knowledgeable about what's going on. And, sometimes people say, well, I'm too busy, or it doesn't matter anyway, my vote doesn't matter. And just imagine there's, hundreds of years and thousands of people who, died and couldn't vote for us to be able to have this awesome privilege to be able to do that. So it's one simple thing that you can do.
Yeah, that's a really, really great point. Thank you. In terms of thinking now, when you're describing like your day to day and all of the millions of things that you're doing, how many like bills are you typically voting on in any given time?
Well, at the end of session, we could be in there and go through 100 bills in a day, which is a lot. I would say some days it could be 5. It all depends. Some of the bills, depending on if we voted on them before and that they're in the second year, but you just have to vote on them again, those ones go more quickly because you already know we voted on them before. Some bills, it takes hours for us to vote because there's a lot of comments. People have a lot of, if they oppose or they want to speak on a bill, and you get 15 minutes to speak on the bill and you can do it 2 times, and 150 people, if they want to go 2 times, that could be several hours. And there's definitely some different pieces of legislation where we've spent hours talking about different bills, but it's important if you're talking about reproductive health, if you're talking about LGBTQ rights, if you're talking about, things that relate to undocumented immigrants, if you're talking about funding for education, those aren't easy topics and, usually warrant more than a few minutes worth of voting time.
Yeah, definitely. Now, are you voting in person now with COVID, or is it all virtual?
You actually can. When we have session, I do go to Albany. People can virtually, just like we're doing with Zoom now, you can actually log on and vote virtually and raise your hand and you can speak on the bill. And for me, it just, because my legislative director is in Albany, and when I actually have a bill up and I have to debate, when you're there, there's actually programming council people who work for the different committees that when someone's debating you, they might have legal information, technical legal jargon that may be helpful that you can't have if you're sitting on your Zoom, but they sit right next to you in the chamber. Sometimes you don't ever see them, but they're sitting next to you. And for me, just the whole point of being able to be in the room, cast my vote, if I want to hurry up and, change my mind or make a decision, or if I need more information from my legislative director, I can focus sitting in the chamber, but you can see when you're on Zoom and then your dog's barking and the phone's ringing, or let me just run to the restroom and, take a phone call or whatnot. And to me, I just think it's important that if I'm supposed to be voting and we're in session, that I'll be in Albany to do that.
Yeah. Understand that there can be just so many distractions too.
It's a lot. I'm surprised one of those 3 things hasn't come through my door right now.
Well, they're welcome to. It's totally okay. We welcome it. That kind of ties into my next question, which was really like, what has been the most challenging part about legislating since the start of the COVID-19 crisis? And obviously there have been a lot of changes, but I'd be curious to kind of hear.
I think the uncertainty, we gave the governor more powers so that he could make decisions more quickly. And, we couldn't know that hundreds of thousands of people would be affected and, 20-some thousand people would be dead in our state alone. And, being able to provide him the ability to make, executive orders so that, people could be open or close or allocating resources. That's difficult because essentially you're taking away power that you have as a legislature, giving it to the governor, hoping that he's making the right decisions. And, by and large, I think people would agree, relative to COVID, we have been in a better situation than some others. We have been economically hit very hard, and that's devastating. I think that's one of the hardest things about COVID is just the personal economic devastation and businesses that have been decimated by COVID and don't know when they're going to come back. I'm very concerned about the housing crisis, and all of this is happening during the time, we're going through this pandemic. Very concerned about what's going on with the education system. There is huge disparity. There was disparity already. There's, it's ever more apparent, now that we see that the remote learning and some, families don't have the basic capacity to have remote learning in their home. And we may not be doing the right by them as far as providing the quality education. And those three examples are what's happening like right now, when we've been having those conversations for like months.
Yeah, that's really hard. And how do you best try to, I mean, I'm sure you're getting so many phone calls about all of these things, and like, how do you best kind of, it's hard to assure people in a way when there is so much uncertainty, and, to try to say like, oh, I'm trying, like all you can say probably is that I'm trying.
Yeah. I'm not a sugarcoat person. I feel, do you hit them hard with the kindness, or do you, gloss over it? And I feel like, it's being able to identify the situation and have facts. I want to be able to present facts for the people who are calling, because sometimes they might have heard something and it's not necessarily accurate. I wanted to make sure, because information changes every single day. So I wanted to make sure that my, staff knows exactly what are the current rules. And, I'm in touch with the governor's office too, so I can get information about things that might be coming down the pike that we hadn't heard about yet. But, it's important to me, mostly people just want to know someone's listening, that when they call, someone answers the phone. That's usually step one. And we've had irate people call plenty of times. And by the time they hang up, I would say 99% they're fine. Sometimes people, you just can't get them there, and that's okay. And that's what we're there for. But, just being able to present them the information and find answers. And sometimes the answer is, I don't know. And sometimes the answer is not what they want to hear. Because we're not magicians, but it's being able to just answer their phone and answer, their requests, and give them as much factual, up-to-date information as possible.
That makes sense. And so we try to do that too with the library. And sometimes, most of the time you can get through to people, but occasionally, yeah, you just got to kind of say, okay, we can agree to disagree.
Yeah.
In light of like all of the difficulties over the last 6 months, have there been rewarding moments at all? I mean, obviously this is very difficult, but I don't know if there's any sort of like learning experience that you've had from this last 6 months.
I think a couple things. I think one, personally, I would say thank you, COVID. And most people probably never say that. But I'd say thank you, because it has provided an opportunity for people to slow down and be a little more introspective and see what's important. I think because we were all rushing around so much and everything is busy and go, go, go all the time, that, I saw more people walking around my neighborhood than I have ever seen before. I'm like, who are these people and why are they walking around? Because they couldn't go anywhere, and it was wonderful. And for people who just couldn't get there during COVID, and they're like, hurry up, these things need to open up and we don't like it. And, I feel like they squandered an opportunity to be able to reset. I think that was really important. I think one of the things is just like so heartwarming, even though it was like devastating at the time, when we've gotten several people to call the office back or send a letter, and saying, thank you for getting our unemployment application process. I mean, crying because they hadn't received any money for like months, and knowing that because of the call that we were making on their behalf and facilitating through the process for them, that they were able to get monies. We had more people in line for food than ever before. And you're like, how could that possibly be? People live in the suburbs and, they have nice cars and, seemingly everything looks okay. And COVID has shown us that that was absolutely not the case.
And that food insecurity is still going to be
Yeah.
continue for some time now, for sure. A couple of questions I wanted to ask overall. So you've been an assembly woman or member since 2015. So it's now been about 5 years. What would you say probably is your most favorite aspect of what you do, and kind of what drew you to run for assembly member?
Well, my most favorite aspect is being able to get legislation passed. That was like one of the main, jobs that we have here, and actually bringing a significant amount of resources back to the district. Resources meaning money, in some areas that never have received resources. So that has been meaningful. I ran, and I still do this today for my son, and probably not for him personally, but for him. I wanted to make sure that decisions that were being made were being taken into consideration for the future. And I didn't necessarily think that that was happening. I'm a Gen X, so we're like the lost generation, it seems like, in this kind of situation where boomers are having a lot of the conversation, and we always hear about millennials, wanting me. And I'm like, world, there's this whole generation of people who are, productive and, hardworking. And, I just wanted to make sure that my son saw something in, a Black woman being able to, move forward and make decisions and advocate, on their behalf. If they can see it, they can be it, and I wanted to make sure that decisions I was making is in the best interest for the future, obviously for people currently, but in the future. That's, why I do this, continue to do this today, because I feel like that they need that voice, and sometimes they're not being heard.
Yeah. Well, thank you. We appreciate it, and we appreciate you being here too. I was going to ask what your least favorite aspect of your job is, but I also am like, that was such a lovely answer to end on something negative. Was probably, well, not to end, but to kind of like wrap up a bit on something negative is probably not the best. But is there anything you just wish was a little bit different in the life of an assembly member?
I think it's interesting, and my husband can attest to this. I think, it's interesting that, sometimes people are like, oh, you're a part-time legislator, you only work part-time. I would say, talk to my husband, he will tell you that I'm up from sun up to sundown, evenings, weekends, that there's just not a regular schedule. And sometimes it's hard to take time for yourself, and self-care is really important. One of the things that young people had asked me, it was actually the JD school, one of the questions are like, what coursework would you think is important for someone to take? And I always said English. That's very, English is very important. I said psychology because you're working, and dealing with people. But I said one of the most important things is physical education, because this job is very rigorous. I think people, you're just sitting around all the time, and it's not like that at all. You definitely need to have stamina. And sometimes if you're not taking care of yourself in an appropriate way, it can catch up to you.
I know, you need that stamina. I'm sure
Yeah.
it's physically demanding. We have one question from someone who was registered but hadn't shown up. But I still think that this is a really good question to ask, because it's about more particular issue, and we haven't really necessarily discussed particular kind of legislation or issues in general. And Kate asked, is the Assembly considering bills about police reform and preventing police brutality?
Yes, yes. This past summer, we had a significant police reform package that we passed. Some of it consisted of repealing 50A, which is essentially the police records for any misconduct, being able to make that public. We passed that, the governor signed it, and then the New York City Police Union appealed it, saying that they shouldn't have to do that. So obviously it's contentious. We passed a law saying that you can't have chokeholds. Obviously, we saw what happened with the George Floyd case. There was about 8 other bills in the package relative to right to know, the monitoring so that you can record, you have the right to record, the right to know, the police officer and what, you're being charged with when you get pulled over. And, all of these things I think are really important, long time coming, and should have been doing it. And it shouldn't have taken a murder in front of our eyes in order for this to escalate, for us to have taken care of this. But we did. But that it's not everything. There's still more work to be done. And, police brutality is intolerable. And, when we hear people say all lives matter, it's not just Black Lives Matter, it's discounting the conversation about race. And I know it makes people uncomfortable, but it's real and it's true, and it shouldn't be covered up. And I think those conversations have been happening. Sometimes people are tone deaf and they don't want to hear, they don't want to listen. But it's really important because we're talking about the future of our nation, going forward. And you got to be honest. Hey, if there's a couple of police who aren't doing what they're supposed to be doing, we should be able to have that conversation without a whole narrative saying, well, you're just bashing the police. That's generalization. We should be able to call out poor behavior when it's happening.
And hold people in power accountable for their actions. Yeah, definitely. Are there any kind of particular pieces of legislation or issues that you're working on now that you think will be, that you're either excited about or you think are very impactful that you're looking forward to legislating on?
All of the legislation I introduce actually comes from people in the district who come with a problem and say, hey, this is what's going on. And I think, a lot of times people are like, oh, it's like you make it up from the sky or something. I don't know, like where legislation just comes and you just, offer something up. But really, it's a grassroots effort. I've had more housing legislation than any other assembly member that had nothing to do with NYCHA, the public housing in New York City. To me, people having housing stability is very important. So when we're talking about being able to not be evicted because your landlord didn't pay the water, or disability rights, I've had environmental bills that I've passed. Right now, I have a bill related to licenses being suspended for outstanding traffic debt. And we just take it for granted that, someone gets a traffic ticket and they can just drop the $50, $100, $200, $300 and go on their way. And that's not the case. And people are being penalized, and, it penalizes and poor people, and it keeps poor people poor. So trying to find mechanisms to equal the playing field a little bit more. And so those are the kinds of bills that, anything to uplift the people who aren't there, has always been something I strongly advocated for.
Yeah, that's wonderful. Before I kind of open up to any other questions, I was curious, like you live, obviously the district that you represent kind of straddles the city, straddles the suburbs, and I don't know if is it a bit rural too, maybe in parts of like Onondaga or parts of James or DeWitt. How do you kind of navigate the divide between interests? And I know it's a difficult question, but I don't know if that's something you can speak on.
Oh yeah. My district, I would say I probably have the most diverse district of any other assembly member, because I have urban, suburban, rural, and the Onondaga Nation. And so that there's a lot of people who actually don't have, reservation in their district. And I think a lot of people think that I have most of the city of Syracuse, and I actually don't. I only have 28% of the city of Syracuse. I mostly have towns. So DeWitt, Salina, Onondaga, I have most all of those towns. And it's interesting because it's different. I have Beacon Skiff in my district. I have a dairy farm in my district. I have Onondaga Lake, I got Hides in the village of Liverpool, and I have the south side of the city of Syracuse, and they're all economically diverse. There's different needs. But it all really comes down to, I think, some basic principles, regardless of where somebody lives. Regardless of where somebody lives, they want to be able to have meaningful employment. regardless of what their jobs are. They want to have quality education for their kids, whether it's in the inner city of Syracuse or in JD. They want to have infrastructure that works for them. People want to make sure that the potholes are filled, and the roads and bridges are where they're supposed to be, that the infrastructure is there for them. And if you focus on those basic, things that, good paying jobs and, lifting people up out of poverty and, tending to the needs so that people have a good quality of life, regardless of if they live in, apple orchards, the $1 million homes in DeWitt, or if they live, on the east side, and maybe one of the, apartment buildings, that they all get the same kind of advocacy. It doesn't make a difference. If you come to me, I don't care where you live, you'll get the same.
Yeah.
You'll get the same.
Great. Thank you. That was very interesting and a great answer. I'm always fascinated by the kind of geographic divides between places, and so that's really interesting. So now I thought we'd kind of open it up to a larger conversation. If anyone has any questions for Pamela, I know there's just a few of you here, so if there's anything particular you wanted to ask her about, feel free to either type it in the chat or speak now.
Pamela, I just wanted to say thank you for all that you do.
Thanks,
I don't know if you get enough of gratitude and thanks from the people in the community, but for those of you who do what you do, from a single citizen, I thank you.
Thank you. I appreciate that. Thank you.
I know, and we so thoroughly appreciate having you here. Looks like Donna said, what a shame there were not more in attendance. I know it was such a wonderful talk with you, Pamela. We are going to be posting this on our YouTube page as well, so hopefully we can have more viewers that way. And Donna says, thank you, Pam, for taking the time to be with us. You were very articulate and gave us valuable information.
Thank you. I'm always happy to do this. It doesn't make a difference, large group, small, I'd love to do this. I really do. I think it's important, to have these personal relationships with folks. And, I think sometimes people think that politicians, are unattainable, that they live somewhere different. I don't know. It's so funny. I was somewhere in the store, I think it was like in Burlington or something, and I saw this woman that I know, and she had her daughter. She's like, oh, meet Pam, the assembly member. And I know people everywhere. It's so funny because my staff is like, God, you can't go anywhere. Everybody knows you are. And that's a blessing and a curse. But especially with the mask on, it's helpful. And she said to me later, her daughter said to her, she's like, she shops here? I'm like, where am I supposed to shop? I do think that people think that there's like, I don't know, some other place that people go to. I'm just a regular person. Yes, I am an assembly member and I was elected, but I go to the Price Chopper to get my groceries. I'll go to Aldi's, I'll go to Tops, I have no problem putting sweatpants on and my flip-flops and, heading down the highway. It's just, sometimes people think that these people aren't attainable or reachable, and that's unfortunate, because I think for those of us who are here, I'm here. I'm happy to have chats with you all whenever.
Yeah, I think it's such a testament to you too, that you truly are of the community, and when you are someone who does is seen in the community or shops in the community or exists within the community, it's just shows why you're elected and why you are chosen to represent everyone as well. But well, thank you, Pamela. We really appreciate you taking your time off this evening, and we can end early so you can enjoy the rest of your evening here.
It's my pleasure. Really, it was my pleasure to be here with you. Ended on a great day. You ended my day on a very high note, so I really, really appreciate that so much. And I